Welcome back to the Scaling Creative Podcast. Today we are going to talk about and kind of continue the conversation from the last podcast. And we're going to dive into creating content and also repurposing content because it doesn't have to be as hard, I think, as we make it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You talk about that all the time.
Yep. Repurposing content is the best way to just produce a lot. Repurposing and even resharing certain things at certain times. Not all the time, but yeah, it's a great way to produce a lot of content. So much stuff companies have lying around that they can use as content.
Yeah. Actually, just the other day, I was just feeling a little tired and not in the mood to think a new thought. And so I went through some of my content from a while ago and looked at what was popular, what people liked, what people shared. And I turned it into a quote and I shared that. And it got way more engagement than the original post. Yep. Nobody knew.
No. And it's so important. That's the thing. You have to realize, number one, the algorithm doesn't show everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Number two, if you're someone that is growing your brand, you have all these new people who most people don't go back and watch other content. Some people do, but a lot don't.
Yeah.
Especially if you're pulling pieces from old pieces. It's there's a whole new amount of people that are seeing your stuff that may have never seen that.
Yep.
And the people that did already see that, they don't really care either.
Yeah,
they're
good
okay.
Content.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's there again?
And it's a great thing to do because if you produce a lot of content, you have even more content to always repurpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's first start with just in general, different ways to create content. And something that I learned through you from, was it Gary Vee? He was talking about pillars.
Yeah, he talks a lot about pillar content.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is, what pillar content is?
Yeah, so he basically the concept is when we're talking about repurposing content and we're talking about micro content, which is small piece of content that go on social media, the thing people struggle with a lot is to come up with nonstop new small content because it's not easy to nonstop come up with ideas.
Yeah.
So the whole concept behind pillar content is what long form content can you create? It could be a podcast. It could be an article. It could be 5 tips that are your whatever. Your pillar content is the big thing that ends up being broken up into all the various forms. So, this is really easy and popular for people that do speak, that talk a lot, that do keynotes. It's people that do podcasts, people that love writing articles, whatever. That's great pillar content because you have lots of stuff to talk about. It's interviews with people, all that kind of stuff is great. That's why we push a lot of people to podcasts.
Yep.
Because it allows you to do, have that long form. But pillar is basically just the big thing that can be broken up into the smaller thing. And what we talk about all the time is just you posting a lot.
Yeah.
And it's easy to post a lot when you have the big thing to always keep pulling from on a regular basis.
Yeah. I also think sometimes too about pillar content, in my brain of, okay, I talk a lot about these specific topics. So what are even some topics?
Pillar topics. Yep. Yeah.
That you have within your business that you're constantly, and it's different for every single person, but really figure out what are 3 to 5 major pillars.
Yeah.
That topics I talk about a lot or teach on or part of services that I have. And then underneath those, figuring out, like we briefly talked about last episode, of how can you educate people? How can you entertain somebody?
Yep.
Is there something that's inspirational about that? Another thing that I have under mine is to get people involved. What's something that you can do to get other people involved in this content? So I think having that really helps you go from, I don't know what to create, or feeling like I don't have enough to create, to oh my gosh, I have so many things that I can talk about, teach on, inspire, sell, all those different kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at an example, let's take a client of ours is a auto body shop, for example. Your pillar of what your business is basically fixing cars, right? So underneath that, you could build tons of trees and branches full of things of what content can I create that helps people do the stuff themselves? What content can I do to educate people to understand what we're even doing when we say they need a new muffler system?
Yeah.
What content can be, what are the ways that they can keep their car in shape when they're not and then under there, how can I teach people how to do the spark plug? How can I teach people to do the tires? How can I do? So you're building, your pillar can be a piece of content, but it really can be your brain, your company's organization is the pillar. And how can you branch off to do all those different things to make the micro from it.
Yeah,
and it really becomes easy when you look at, if you put a whiteboard down of like, what do we talk about? What is our company about? There better be a lot of things in general that your company's about, because that's why you're in business in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and it's just taking those things and figuring out how you can make a lot of things, just like you said. All the little topics that you talk about, a single topic. If you were talking about self-image or something, there's a million things that you could talk about off of that. And then you create yourself a little calendar of, okay, well, I'm going to film all these in one day maybe. And that's going to be, and that's what we try to talk about a lot. And what I think is important is people understanding the need to set a filming, if you're going to create video content, set yourself a schedule. And you don't need to create one video when you go to sit behind the camera. Create a bunch of them so that you can produce a month's worth of content and get ahead of the schedule. Because when it comes to content, that's the hardest part for people is consistency. And it's usually because on a Friday, before the day's out, they're thinking about what they need to post on that Friday afternoon. And then you're running last second. And then you get to next Friday, the same thing. Like, you can't think like that.
Right.
You have to try to plan things out and try to just get ahead of the schedule and have your things that are what they call evergreen content, which is content that is just basically good always. You know, when you're talking about different things, there's certain topics that are always going to be relevant. If you watch it 10 years from now, it's still going to make sense. There are other things, if you were talking about like, you know, how to fight something that was currently happening in the world, that's a different story. That's only going to be, and the more evergreen content you create, the longer that content can always be repurposed and used and used and used and used.
Yeah, for sure.
And not everyone has that kind of evergreen content, but there's a lot of evergreen content available.
Yeah, there's a lot more than I think people realize. So I just think it would be so helpful to, if you're struggling with content or, you know, I think that you should do this all the time, but have a meeting with your team or yourself if you're a one-man shop, and then just literally, whether it's on a whiteboard, or I personally am like a Post-it note freak. Did you know I was going to say that?
Yes.
Okay. So I love Post-it notes, and I just like think about, I don't know, that helps me because then I can move things around on, you know, with the Post-it notes. So think about the pillars topic wise in your business, and then break things down educational, you know, however you want to do that, teach, inspire, sell, and then figure out some different ideas with your team, because utilize having a team, like that's a lot of brains. It's collective wisdom. People always come up, you know, on my team, like with things that, oh my gosh, that's such, how did I not think of that, you know? Or somebody says, well, you're really good at this. I am, you know, because sometimes you just need somebody else in that. So starting that conversation, you can go from not knowing what to do with content to having 75 ideas that you can then plug into a calendar or whatever.
And a great free resource for you is an app called Trello. Trello, a lot of people have heard of this, but Trello is a great free resource that is just kind of like an idea board. It's literally, I think, free for almost every like perk other than maybe the amount of people. If you, there's like a paid version, but it's a great resource for those brainstorm meetings. Because obviously there's nothing wrong with whiteboard, nothing wrong with sticky notes, nothing. But if you want a digital solution that allows everyone to kind of see it in real time and move things around, it's great. Especially for content piees. Because you can put things in schedules and you can put notes inside it and add certain people to it. Really, really good free resource to check out for sure. Just we'll put that in the show notes if we remember. We're really bad at remembering which one the show notes. Or I should say, I'm really bad at that. But Trello, it's easy to find. Look for it.
Yeah, for sure. What are some other ways that you feel like can help people get inspired with finding content?
I think definitely consuming it, but you got to be careful you're not so overly consuming that you forget to produce anything. I think a lot of people make that mistake. They're really, really good at, I'm just learning more about social media. I'm watching. No, you're just watching less social media.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
You're watching, if you find yourself watching cat, like reels.
That means you're way
done.
too deep.
Unless you're the owner of a pet store.
Oh, there you go.
Sure, look at that. See?
Come on, man.
Listen to the cat lover. She's trying to defend her cat.
I'm just defending.
She's trying to.
Because you know I watch a lot of cat.
I know. I didn't think about that until.
But one thing to be inspired, like one thing you could do is if you almost do homework. If you were to say like I'm going to spend 15 minutes on TikTok, and you were to look at TikTok in a whole different way, and every single post you take notes of something. Like if you watch a piece of thing and you're like, okay, this has, and look at the things that have a lot of views and be like, what did it do in the first 5 seconds? what did it do at the end?
Yeah.
Was there a call to action? Was there not? Were they trying to sell something? Were they trying to not? Were they trying to, did they educate me? Did they entertain me? What were they trying to do? And you'll start to see trends that you may think that's genius, but they probably thought about that when they were creating it in the first place, because really good people on social media understand how to create stuff.
Yep.
You know, you'll look at certain people on YouTube and all these different people that just blow up on these platforms, and you're like, I feel like anyone could do that, but they can't.
Yeah.
They're these people that are humongous YouTubers and humongous content creators, they are intelligent at knowing what works on social media platforms.
Yes.
There's a reason they have 20 million, 30 million subscribers. You may think the content's no good or terrible, and you're like, how could these people watch it? They know what they're doing, and they're very, very good at doing it. And you can see trends, especially on YouTube. Look at some of the most popular vloggers of all time, or look at people that create more content that is more motivational. There's very unique things that you do in the beginning of videos, 10 seconds into the videos, later in the videos, that make a huge difference in the engagement you get.
Yeah.
And do some homework. Watch this stuff, and instead of just consuming it, take 30 minutes to consume it and take notes.
Yeah. Yeah. When you walk into a room as a student versus, you know, like the teacher, you walk in different. You're observing different things. So like walk in as a student and see what you can learn. I think also people that have really good content, they know who they're talking to. So do you know who you're not that you have to like pigeonhole yourself totally, but you do have to know, okay, this video, who am I talking to? And how, like, you almost want them to be like, man, how are they reading my emails, or like they reading my mind, or you know, because then they feel known and seen, and so they're way more likely to consume it if they feel like you're speaking directly to them. So I think knowing them is important.
I think that's definitely important. I do think that there's the other side, the devil's advocate side, that I will say can also be valuable, is that, because I do this a lot, I have a very different a couple of different audiences that kind of follow what I do. There's like the filmmakers, there's the people that just like vlog stuff, there's the people that are business owners, and then there's like a LinkedIn audience, which is potential clients.
Yes.
That it's also important to realize it's really a good idea to have a target audience and go hard after it, because you can obviously know who they are. But it's also okay if you want to be spread around a bunch, because you also just have to realize that like not everyone sees everything.
Yep.
And they also can decide to watch it or not. And depending on, you know, especially if you're a personal brand and you're into a bunch of different things, this is sometimes the hardest thing, because they're like, well, I don't really have a target. And some people don't want to be like, I don't want to be the YouTube tutorial guy for filmmakers only, because that pigeonholes me.
Yeah.
I don't also want to be like the person that's just into this or just into that. So are there less views because of that from a lot of certain videos that don't hit people? Absolutely. But I look at it like every view is an eyeball that someone else didn't get.
Right.
And even if something does a little less performance-wise, which never has mattered to me, it's thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of eyeballs in all different genres that, depending on the industry you're in, as a video, as someone that ultimately makes their money from video production, I don't care what eyeballs see it. What matters is that if you have a business that can potentially sell a service that everyone could use, which are honestly most businesses.
Yeah.
Sure, you may have a target of people that really would find value in your thing, but who's to say that the person that found value in a vlog that is not a filmmaker or a business owner doesn't have a father who is, who they share that with, and ends up that being your biggest client because they found something. It's so you don't overthink it, but also there's nothing wrong with being super focused on a certain genre, because that makes sense too. But there's not like the right or wrong. I've kind of found that, because I go back and forth all the time of like, should I be more specific? And I'm like, well, no, because like I want a lot of people to see it, like various people. So,
and I'll just say this, because with me and my business, like I have a super specific niche in certain products that I have. And then I have like my podcast is very general. And so that one is like a very wide range. And then I have other things that are super niche. But so it depends on too, like who am I talking to on that platform or in this post type of thing. So it can vary. But also too, just something to be mindful.
Yeah. And I think it's a great point of what you're saying too, of like, especially when you are we don't want people to oversell on social media, but when you are going to sell something, you absolutely need to know who you're talking to.
For sure.
And it's okay if that gets the least performing views, if the views are the ones you want.
Yes.
Like, you should be very, very intentional when you're actually trying to sell.
Yes.
And that's the great thing about social media. When you're talking about being able to, when you put paid money behind social media for selling something, it's amazing because not only can you cater the content to them, but you can make sure that they only see it.
Yes.
Rather than the people that wouldn't find value of it.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of social media that you never had before.
Right.
You don't need generic videos when you actually want to sell.
That's a good
because you
point.
can just make sure the right people see it.
That's a really
So when you're talking specifically to like a single mom, if you target an ad to just single moms, you can be unbelievably specific in that piece of content, and then it hits them incredibly.
Yes.
Because you can speak to what you know only they will understand. And you don't have to worry about the non-single person that sees your content, because you can make sure that doesn't, no one else sees it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Right
And I think that that's something that as people get into it more, especially when they're starting, I feel like when you first start putting out stuff, a lot of people aren't seeing it regardless. The best thing is just put everything out.
Yeah.
Just because, number one, you'll get a feel for what you even like talking about. Because, I think I could do really well if I only went on a certain genre of like tutorials or whatever, but I don't really enjoy it all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't want to also just do something I don't like.
Yes.
But for me to get a feel for what I like doing and what I don't, and then what does well and what doesn't, it always just opens up avenues to do kind of a little bit of whatever.
Yeah.
But if you want to get specific and then sell something, you can really go after those people.
Yeah, for sure. I think people too are scared when they have a smaller audience, but you should probably be the least scared.
Yeah.
Because
We always
people
say that.
are really watching.
When you start, don't worry about how specific you are.
Yeah.
Nobody's watching it anyway.
But
Yeah.
a lot of the clients that like we start with, you can tell they're nervous to put out content.
Yep.
And they think, a lot of people overthink, what content should I put out? And they want to make it perfect. Like they script it out, they pick all of the elements of it, and they're like, I have to have this whole thing perfect. I have to say the perfect thing, and I have to follow the script exactly, and it has to be edited this way, and then I'll post it once it's polished.
Yep.
But that's like a huge mistake. And you've seen, like when we work with clients that have, all the library full of footage, the things that do well are the little things that you can pick out from like a safety meeting about bee stings. Just like throw that in there and caption it, and that's a piece of content. And it doesn't have to be perfect or scripted.
Yes.
But those end up doing really well because they're just
always
little things, little nuggets throughout the day, and you do a lot of it, more and more content. That way you're not waiting till a perfect day to do the perfect piece of content that's been completely polished over.
That's what holds most people back.
Yep.
What you just said
Yep.
is this perfect. Honestly, in life, this
Yep. Oh,
holds so
absolutely.
many people back. They want everything to be perfect. When people become an entrepreneur for the first time or whatever, they want their journey to look perfect. If you chase perfection, you will never make it or be good at anything.
And not to mention, what I've always said is like, who are you to say that it's perfect?
Yeah, true.
Like, for me to overthink a piece of content for a month and then put it out and be like, okay, now it's perfect, and nobody sees it, I'm like, they just don't get it. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just not perfect.
It's just not perfect. Yeah.
Like, it's the content that does so well half the times. It was a great example of a keynote speaker that we work with a lot, a great friend of mine too, so I'm able to have like candid conversations. I remember specifically a piece of content we created, and he just wasn't a huge fan of it. This was early on in his journey. I was like, just post it. He's like, but I just don't like the way like I sound. I'm like, post the thing. It did better than any content he ever had in his past.
Yep.
And now to this day, it's helped him unbelievably because he just will put out kind of anything.
But he would have never known if he didn't try different pieces.
And it's the whole thing is it's
waited
just
until
like you can't say, the audience decides whether anything's any good.
Yeah.
Quality perspective, audio perspective,
You can't take it
education,
personally if they
entertainment.
don't like a piece.
Yeah.
Just
and
try something.
and I think that when you actually understand that, it takes the pressure off creating.
Yep.
Because I'm not concerned if a certain person judges this too strongly, because I know that all these other people might find it valuable. I'm not concerned when one video doesn't do super well, but I see a one comment of someone that it really impacted.
Yes.
Because it's all about number one, just keep putting it out. I always say, like, it's in a social media world, especially when you're not doing paid advertisement, it's a lottery system. And you win the lottery by buying more tickets to the lottery, not by buying one a year and hoping that one is the correct one.
That's a really good point.
And the more tickets you buy, the more chance you have. Like, I love saying with almost every meeting I have, like, no one ever created a viral video. They made a video that went viral. Because you cannot predict what's going to work.
Yeah.
Most videos that went viral, no one ever really thought that they
Yes.
would go that viral.
Yeah.
I had a video just over like the Thanksgiving break that I knew I was going to post, but I just wasn't super like crazy about it. But I was like, I woke up that day and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get this out today because I really want to get it done. Just get it out. And it was my fastest growing video in history on my channel in a matter of 24 hours. And I was almost not going to post it then. I might have eventually, but the whole point is it just makes me laugh because I'm always like, all the videos people don't think are that good end up being the best. And the ones that I post and I'm like, I really think this is going to be super valuable. It does bad. I'm always just like, that's why I love social media.
I know.
See, then you can learn. You can learn the patterns. The more you put out, the more you see what goes viral after you put it out.
Then you see
and more importantly, you learn that the pattern is not predictable.
Exactly.
So don't overthink it.
Exactly.
Like, just put it out.
Yeah. I saw this one ad the other day and it was like how to create viral videos. And I'm like, that is like the wrong, you know what I mean?
And it probably had 15 views. Like,
but that's the thing. Like, you don't necessarily
you can't create a viral video. No.
That's the thing.
It's a recipe for a viral video.
Yeah. And
step one.
People are trying to make something what it's not. You know what I mean? Just produce things. And like you had said, there was one post that I'm like, I love mic drop of my own. I'm like, this is so good. And it sucked. Like, it did nothing.
Did you take it personally though? You were like, oh man.
Yeah, I did a little bit. But then, a couple days later, I posted something that was dumb to me. And it got so many shares and saves. I'm like, why? But sometimes what you see as normal is not normal to other people. You're so close to what you're good at that you don't even recognize that it's great. So I think, it's a matter of just putting it out there. And when you're new and you don't have a lot of that is the best time to do this. And
to experiment. That's the best time to experiment.
For sure. But then also, I think this is so important. No matter how many people you have, followers, whatever, serve them. Stop thinking about, I need more followers. Start just serving the people that you do have. Loving the people that you do have. Building the relationship with people that you do have. Because naturally, it will grow from there.
I also think I've wanted to make a video about this for a while, about how people don't realize what a view is of how many people. Like, if you posted a video tomorrow and it got 50 views on LinkedIn, naturally you might think to yourself, like, a lot of people didn't see it. But if I put 50 people in a room in front of you and had you talk, would that not feel like a pretty captive audience that would fill this whole room and talk? But yet people, I think, forget that, like, those are actually people behind that. So over the course of a week on LinkedIn, I may post 10 videos or 15 videos. Some may get 30 views, some may get 200 views, some may get 1,000 views, whatever. But week by week, my face is showing up to 10, 20,000 people every single week, just branding myself. And I think that people also just are too used to, like, they see massive numbers on a platform that someone has that is, millions of subscribers. They post something and it gets 20 views and they're like, I just feel like it's not worth my time. That's 20 people that might have never seen you, especially when you talk about B2B on a LinkedIn platform. There may be 10 eyeballs, but what if 7 are CEOs of a company that could be massive clients? Like, eyeballs are eyeballs. And if you also just don't overthink that, it'll put less pressure on you, but also will make you excited that it may only be 20 people. But if I had the chance tomorrow to talk to 25 people that were business owners in our area and portray a message, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
But yet people won't do it on a video because they're afraid that it doesn't look good.
It's not perfect enough.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's so true. So when you start to create content, you're putting stuff out there, experiment, it's totally fine. good, bad, ugly, everything in between. Then you can also repurpose content. And, I mean, it could be, let's say it's a podcast or it's a blog or whatever it might be, fill in the blank. Then you can make it into quotes, some of your favorite quotes from that. Make it little clips of things. There's so much that you can do with one piece of content. So what do you recommend to people? I mean, is it take your best podcast or blog or whatever and then break it down? Or what do you recommend for people when they're thinking about repurposing? Where do you start?
I think you first have to start with some content in the first place. So if we're talking about a client that doesn't even have content yet, you can't really repurpose much.
Right.
But if we're talking about, so let's talk about both sides of it. The person first that has no content, or let's just say no video content or no social media content.
Okay.
You still have a lot of things randomly even throughout maybe your website or even throughout your building that can start to be a piece of content. But we'll talk more about for the repurposing side of it, people that are kind of already somewhat creating content. The cool thing about repurposing content is you may do a podcast like this, for example, for an hour. In this hour, we talk about a lot of things that are all very different audiences if you actually break it down into micro content. Like this podcast is about social media or about repurposing content. But we can pull pieces from this that might have been to the person that's scared of creating the content. We can pull it to the business owner to repurpose content. We can pull it to the person on LinkedIn that's more about why those eyeballs are so important for your content. We can post to Instagram that's more about not overthinking the perfection side of it. We can post to TikTok. So the great thing about repurposing is you take a pillar content that has to be general in terms of a single title for a 1 hour video or whatever. But now you create 20, 30, 50 different pieces, depending on how many you want to create, that now go into all the different actual specific platforms that drive people back to the actual podcast. Or whatever the content is. And so when I always think about repurposing content, so I have someone that works specifically like with me on helping me create content. So his job is to always just pull content and to go back for old YouTube videos, podcasts, everything, and just make content. But I specifically, even sometimes week by week, can say like, I only want content that is really the LinkedIn audience this week. And so all the stuff that's going to go on there is going to be specific topics that make sense to a business owner, someone watching me on LinkedIn. When I say I want content that's much more for like the filmmaker, it's a whole different section of content that makes sense for those people. And that's what's great about it is that if you kind of wanted to, if your goal at the very minimum was like, I want to post once a week on LinkedIn and once a week on Instagram and once a week, these pillar content pieces give you all these micros that can easily spread across those. And then you just start to create more and more and more and more and more.
And as an editor, this is the editor in me coming out.
I love it. Bring it out, girl.
Organize that stuff. The more footage you get, what I do is in Final Cut, you keyword all of your footage into different categories. And then like even years later, you know where everything's at and you can pull stuff from those little bins and come up with a million different things.
And what can be even more powerful that we also do with a transcription service called otter.ai is every single piece of content that I create is transcribed back end. So if we want to search for the last time that I talked about something, I can search and it will look at all the times I talked about it. So if you were going to put, and this is, I mean, Gary Vee is the master of this. He's got a massive team, but he's got his own search engine just for this. But the beauty of it is that when you suddenly want to, as a business, repurpose a piece of content that is like about a certain topic, if you actually get good enough at organizing and keeping track of what things were talked about, you can instantly be like, we want to put a video together all about this and look at all the different times that things were referenced and put these mashups together and these different things. Which then also brings a lot of like credibility to you because they're like, "What? I never saw that piece of content. What is that from? What is this from? What is this from?" And they start to want to look at your catalog of stuff. And that takes obviously years. We start with clients. We've had a couple of clients we've been working for years, and we have crazy organization, and we can go back and when they want a certain piece of content made, we can search for it. It becomes awesome. That's why we talk all the time about just creating it all the time.
Yes.
Because the more you have, the more the repurposing becomes super important. Because when the editor who helps me do all my content, when he has hundreds and hundreds of videos over the years that I've done, it's way easier to repurpose.
Yeah.
You can't repurpose something if you never even did it in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it easy, though. You got to start. You just got to start creating.
Yes.
Talk to the camera nonstop.
Yeah.
To the new content creator, I mean, the advice is to obviously start from the beginning with organization.
Yeah.
Because that way you have it. You can build it over time. And if, you have a lot of stuff to sort through, if you've done this for a while, I mean, it's still, you can organize it, just takes more time. But
Yeah.
Yep.
And even like the last episode, we talked about going live, like how that's a really great thing to start doing and for the algorithm and all that stuff for right now. But then also being able to pull micro content from that. So, because you can go live on Instagram or wherever, save that video to your phone, edit it if you want to, put it in subtitle, have the captions or whatever, what else is subtitle?
There's lots of rev.com, ClickScribe we
rev.com.
like a lot. It's basically just captioning the caption of the titles.
Yeah, but that's really important, making sure that you have the captions in your videos because it's
the headline grabber, and 85% of people watch video without sound. So the reason you see titles and captions is because just like when you're scrolling through social media, if you see a video pop up right away, if it has a title and it is relevant to you, you are likely to stop and watch it.
Yes.
Versus hoping that they see the description really quickly. That doesn't happen as often. A video. So yes, it's a little bit more work, but it's incredibly important.
Yes.
That's why we do with every single piece of content that goes out.
Yeah. So do that, and then from that live, you can pull it apart, and So I think that even if you're new and you're just starting to do things, just having this concept and being aware of it, you think differently.
Yep.
Even when you're
that
making
for
it.
later. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You just make one thing and you know that you can save it for later to bring back all these pieces.
And podcasts are a great way. Obviously, podcasts, you have to make sure that you have, if you're going to do a group of people, that they obviously like talking, that they enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
But if you only have one person, then it may not be a podcast. It may just be like you set up and talk to the camera for an hour once a week and you answer frequently asked questions about things. And it may be whatever it is, but it's looking for opportunities that you can create content for those things. And it's a big reason why we do video for this podcast. It's not just because people watch a podcast on YouTube. It's because we're a video company, so it makes sense to also have content that comes out that has a visual to it instead of it just being bouncing wave file or something. So is there more work? Yeah, but it makes sense for us to do that. And that's why we try to get as many clients as possible to always be thinking about how can we create pillar pieces of content, because then what also happens is when you get to times like COVID, for example, you can still keep putting content out because you've been filming and pull out more and more, rather than if you're kind of doing everything week by week and you're filming and editing, you run out of things really fast.
Absolutely.
So it's just a good thing, but it could be a podcast. It could be a blog article that turns into we want to be clear, content is not just a video.
Right.
It's text, it's photos, it's anything you want. And so pillar content is also taking a video and making it into a micro piece of written content somewhere, and a quote graphic somewhere else, and another article that branches off a top. It's content is content.
Yes.
We're not just talking about video. Obviously, video is a primary thing of what we do, but that pillar micro content thing is so easy to do in all levels. If you're a person that really doesn't like video and video is not your thing whatsoever, but you love writing, you could do the same thing.
Yes, absolutely.
In all the different ways. And that's the important thing to us.
And as you said, I think when you're aware of what you're going to do with it, or just knowing I can make content out of this, when you're creating a podcast or you're writing an article or you're shooting something out in the field, just keeping a mental note, that right there was a good piece.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can kind of like always remember, or you can write it down, or you can like in Final Cut, you can put a marker. Like
Yep.
if I'm editing a podcast,
Yeah.
put a little marker where somebody said something that was amazing, and
Yeah.
now you know for later that's where you could put your content. Just having that mindset makes it easier.
And having some sort of source, like we talked about, Trello, having something that you can kind of log those ideas is also very good.
Yes.
Like if you're a notepad person, that's fine too, whatever it is. But having something that's readily available, because every time you come up with an idea, we have one client specifically who like is obsessed with just like writing down ideas.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, we'll get like messages with, hey, here's 200 new ideas, because he's just an idea person, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But like log those, because then when you suddenly aren't feeling super creative,
Yeah.
just go through your log of all the things you were going to do. And when you put a log, try to put some thoughts behind, because you may forget what you were thinking. Don't just put a title, because you may be like, what in the world was I even talking about?
Yeah.
Put some information.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I wanted to create a piece of that. Because that's what we do all the time. Then if I suddenly need a piece of content and we want to put something out, we could just be like, boom, we go in this thing and it has all these ideas that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And it's good to do.
I love that.
'Cause you're always coming up with ideas. You're always
all the
coming up with questions that clients ask. You're coming up with things. All those things turn into content.
I bet you use Post-it notes to write those down.
You have a massive board for
I have
Post-it notes.
so many Post-it notes. It's insane. I actually have this. One day I want to have my own line.
Post-it
Ooh,
notes.
notes.
Post-it notes.
Michaela Post-it note.
Michaela's
Oh my gosh, that'd be so fun.
That'd be so fun. But also, it's so funny because you begin to, like, your brain starts thinking about different things differently. Even when I listen to my pastor, I think about like, ooh, that minute. That would be a great.
That's a good minute.
I can hear when the thing stops. The music stops right there.
Text over it, like
logo.
Yeah, it's so funny though, because you do begin to think that way. But allow yourself to be a beginner. Allow yourself to make mistakes, be imperfect. Like, stop trying to create the perfect piece of content every day and just produce.
Yep.
And listen to your audience, see what they like, give them more of that, and have fun. I think that's another piece of this, is a way to create and repurpose is have fun with what you're doing, because also passion, enthusiasm, fun, that stuff sells.
Yep. And I think it's important also to realize that like this is so natural, I think, to all of us, because it's what we do.
Yeah.
To most people, the idea of like coming up with things and making a piece of content is not natural. And like, this is not a sales pitch for just us. There are tons of other companies that you can obviously help you with this. But if this is something that you're not natural at, that you're really thinking of like, okay, that sounds great, you guys do it all the time, try to find someone that can help you do it.
Yes.
Because this is something that is very, very valuable. And it is something that we highly recommend that you invest financially into.
Yep.
Because even if you have your own internal people, you're still investing into it. But whether you hire a company, but also pay attention to like, if you're going to produce a lot of content and you're going to hire someone to produce a lot of content, make sure that the people you're hiring are producing content, because it comes so natural to us. We do it all the time. But I know from experience, as we've seen even various companies, different things, that sometimes that's not as natural for certain people to just think about how to come up with something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And the more and more that you can do it, the better you get at it. But if you're a person that like video is not your thing, but you really want to do it, and I don't even recommend that you necessarily like hire an internal person immediately, because you don't really know what you're looking for.
Yep, exactly.
So, that's what we help companies all the time with, just getting their own internal people to even help with it, because it's so important. It's going to continue to be more and more and more important. And if you're feeling so overwhelmed and like, I can't even concept the idea of doing that, hire someone to help you do it.
Yep.
Because not doing it just because you don't want to is still silly. And especially a small business, even though it's going to be some money out of your pocket to get it done, we've seen how successful it is for people.
Yeah.
And you really have to just realize how important it is.
Yeah.
You need to create it.
Yeah.
The people that come to us that say they're terrible at it and need help end up mindset shift where they might not know what to do at first, and we help them. But then as they start thinking about it, they're like, oh, maybe I could do this when you're here. And like, we could shoot this when you're here. And they start having their own ideas. They want to, this would be a good piece of content. And they get their team together to do. So we can see a lot of our clients growing that way. Because we're helping them learn how to do this.
Yeah, video is so important. Even like when I created my course, my online course. And then I have a promo video for it. So many people after they saw it, oh, you're legit. I'm like, oh yeah, my 56 video, online is not legit, but this 1 minute, the promo clip, but it really makes a difference too. And when you invest, I think in like a level, because even totally honest moment here, started working with, or have a meeting set up with some guy for financial stuff. And I saw this one promo video and it was very low quality and it made me question some things. So I just think like put your money in certain areas. I personally think video is one of those things that if it's not your jam,
it's worth it.
Hire somebody that it is there.
Yeah, because it's not even that it's not even that everything has to be flawless video quality, but at the same time, when you have to realize that no matter what industry you're in, there are people that are doing it very legit. Yeah. So if you want to stick out, or at least be even considered in there are people that produce incredible videos for really good videos produced for their company that aren't even as good as the other company, but they look way better. Just because of what they're putting out there. Because it's a brand thing. People that don't know about you, it's not just that we're in video that it makes us look at the videos and critique them. People critique them more than you think. And it's not even that it can't be a valuable video if it's not shot well or looks good or sounds good, but when you're talking about a brand, that makes a big difference. When you hear about someone for the first time but see them in a very professional light, you're kind of like, who are these people? Versus, do you look like a mom and pop shop that is real raw? There's nothing wrong with real raw as well, but I think there needs to be a blend, something that really represents you.
And if you're like, I'm just thinking of an example of, let's say you're a speaker, right? If your speaker reel doesn't match, like if you charge $50,000 to speak at some place, your speaker reel needs to look like a $50,000 speaker. But that's the same thing though. When you're looking at business in general, like it has to kind of match that. So, and video captures brand in like a very specific way. And it has this beautiful ability to tell a story. So I don't know, like I just think that has to match.
It should. And I think a lot of people would agree, but yet they don't put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, well, I just think they should.
Yeah,
there you go. That's it, guys. The end.
That's it.
End of story.
But I absolutely think they should, and I think it's only going to be more and more important as we go on. Social media has obviously changed the whole scope of what happens and what people consume, and people are looking, and how you're represented in social media, I think matters way more than what people think.
Yes.
And that's why you need to kind of, I've always said too, like if you're going to be on social media, you're going to have accounts on social media, they all should represent your brand in some way. And representing if you have a TikTok, but you don't use it at all for your company, that looks to the person that only found you on TikTok like you don't exist.
Yeah.
They don't say, oh, well, they might be active on other social media. They're finding you on the social media they prefer the most. So it doesn't even mean you have to be on them all. It just means if you're going to be on them as your company, you better be on them. Because if you want someone to randomly find you, but then you don't use it whatsoever, you look dead to them because they might not. You might have the best website ever and the most well put together website. If they never see it because they're not interested in websites, you're not helping yourself.
Right.
So trying to just be active and professional and whatever you want to represent yourself everywhere is super important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so as you're looking to create content and repurpose it, I mean, there's so many different ways. We talked about a lot of different things. And if you go live, obviously it doesn't need to be this quality of video, but if you have a promo that you need to match the price that you're, selling your service at, like those things need to match. But just in general, showing up, trying new things, being consistent, not chasing perfection, and then repurpose those big pillar content things that you have. Anything else you guys want to add?
Nope.
Wrap this up?
No, I think it's good. I just think there's so much potential pillar content for any company because you have a lot of knowledge in the stuff you do, and I mean, pillar content is just about putting a lot of information out there and just giving you, I mean, if you're good enough to just create micro content by itself without pillar, then do that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But pillar is an easier way to start and then repurpose. And then we didn't even really touch on it, but resharing things that have been out from a year ago and all is also a way to kind of put new content out.
Yep.
It's going to get a different organic reach. It's going to get a different, it's a little different, but there are absolutely ways that there's nothing wrong with that. Because also a piece of content is sharing a piece of content.
Yes.
Because it's still you showing up or hopefully showing up on a news feed.
Yeah.
So when you find things you love that don't just have to do with your industry, sharing is also content.
Yep.
Because it's all about just getting up there and getting people to see you.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with even sharing past things. Doesn't mean you should do that all the time, but we have clients that do that all the time that share things from a year ago or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's still relevant.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what like we talked about in the other episode about, or I think it was the other episode about evergreen content.
Yep.
The more that you post stuff that isn't time sensitive, the more content you're putting in a library of reusable. Especially your pillar content.
Yep.
If your pillar content makes sense anywhere at any time, it's always going to be so much easier to resurface than when you're talking about something that is like current. So like if you're in a tech world, it's a little different because this stuff changes so much.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about everyday things, it's always usable. So
There's, oh my gosh, there's like so
many helpful tidbits.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming when you
It can.
think about creating content. But
Yeah, but try to think about it as more. Whenever I get overwhelmed, I just think, okay, how can I get curious? And I just kind of flip that a little bit in my brain. So get curious about producing content. Notice people who are doing it well and see what you can put your student hat on, and see what you can learn from them and how you can.
and
kind
just
of
start
recreate that.
somewhere.
Start somewhere.
Even if you have $500 a month to spend or $100 a month to spend, figure out what you can do with anything.
Absolutely.
Because you will start to see why it matters, which you'll start to invest more because of that, and you'll start to invest more, and then it all works out.
Yep.
But you can't, don't feel like you have to start tomorrow with this $200,000 budget and cameras and people. Just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Start on your phone, producing it yourself.
Yep.
And then figuring out what you want your rhythm to be and have people come alongside of you. Have a company help you just analyze what you're doing and give you tips to do things yourself to even save money. There's so many different ways that are available to that.
Yeah.
And it's just about being a student learning and then just starting somewhere in some budget somehow. I don't know.
You can do it. I mean, I think that's just what I want to
Yep.
say to people is you can absolutely do this, and you'll get to a point where you're kind of at your ceiling, and then I think you should, a little bit before you hit your ceiling, reach out to somebody who does it really well, like you.
Yep.
There's
there.
just I mean, I
No,
do
but
it
we
too.
are, we never try to obviously just sell our services on this podcast, but obviously if you're ever looking for that kind of stuff, especially conversations of how, consulting type of things to help build, we obviously love doing that. And we do have a lot of experience with that. And so, if we can be of assistance, please don't feel obligated, but feel free to reach out anytime for sure.
Absolutely. We would love to hear what you took away from today's conversation, and maybe did it spark something in you? Did it give you an idea? We would love to hear about that. We always love engaging with you guys that are watching and listening. So comment if you're watching on YouTube, share it on Instagram if you feel so led.
Yep.
But thank you so much for spending time with us, and we will see you next time.
That's right. See ya.